Hello, I'm Chris Scher, Member Communications Director of the Society of Broadcast Engineers, and welcome to the SBE WEBxtra, the SBE chapter of the web. This is the monthly SBE meeting, usually held on the third Monday of the month. The SBE is the Association for Broadcast and Multimedia Technology Professionals with nearly 4,000 members, mostly in the U.S., but also around the world. The SBE recently held its annual election of officers and directors for the coming year. This included all 4 officer positions and 6 of the 12 directors. Ted Hand was reelected to serve as a second term as president of the SBE, and we'll talk to Ted on today's installment of the SBE WEBxtra. But before we do, I have the SBE member update for August 19th, 2024. Webinars by SBE continues to add new webinars. In July, a new 4-part series began, Indoor Production Lighting for Broadcast Engineers. Cindy Cavell of Cavell-Mertz Spectrum Division of Capital Aerospace Group, C. Webster Marsh, the owner of Penumbra Controls, and Javid Butler, a senior engineer with HDR Consulting, are the instructors. Part 2 will be presented on August 22nd. Parts 3 and 4 will stream in September and October. On September 19th, the Broadcast Blueprint Advanced Tactics for Cloud-Based Large Data Transfer will be presented. This webinar delves into the complexities of cloud-based large data transfers within the broadcasting industry. Using network analyzers in MOM proofs will be presented on October 24th. This webinar covers how VNAs can be used as a tool in gathering data and conducting an FCC method of moments proof of performance for an AM radio station antenna array. Gary Cavell of Cavell-Mertz and Associates of the Capital Aerospace Group and Jeff Welton of Nautel are the instructors. And you can always access the entire library of webinars by SBE on demand. For more information on these and all of them, go to sbe.org/webinars. The next chapter exam window is in November. The application date for those exams is September 6th. You can also arrange to take an SBE certification exam at any time via private proctoring. More information on SBE certification is available online at sbe.org/certification. And the 2024 SBE National Meeting heads to Wisconsin this year. It will be held in Middleton during the Midwest Regional Broadcasters Clinic. The SBE National Meeting events include the SBE Membership Meeting, the SBE Member Reception, and SBE Awards Dinner, all to be held September 11th. The SBE will also hold a meeting of the Board of Directors and a joint meeting of the Certification and Education Committees on September 10th. The SBE National Awards Dinner will recognize the honorees from the SBE Awards program and includes a keynote address from former SBE Executive Director John L. Perret. With the SBE celebrating 60 years, John will look at some history of the SBE. Registration for the clinic is required, and tickets for the SBE Awards Dinner must be purchased separately. Get information on both at the SBE website. There's a link on the homepage. And that is your SBE member update for July 8th, 2024. So as I noted earlier, the SBE recently completed its annual election. Ted Hand was reelected the president of the SBE. Ted is our guest today. The additional results of the election follow. Reelected vice president is Kevin Trueblood of Chapter 90, Southwest Florida, for a second one-year term. Gary S. Morrill, Chapter 91, Central Michigan, has been elected treasurer. And Shane Toven, Chapter 43, Sacramento, has been elected to his first term as SBE secretary. There were 8 candidates running for 6 open board seats. Those elected to serve 2-year terms on the board of directors are David Antoine of Chapter 15, New York, Greg Dahl of Chapter 96, Rockford, Illinois, Dustin Hapley of Chapter 26, Chicago, Jeff Juniette, Chapter 42, Central Florida, Sam Wallington, Chapter 103, Nashville, and Fred Willard, Chapter 37, District of Columbia. Antoine Dahl and Willard were incumbents and were reelected. Andrea Cummis of Chapter 15, New York, continues to serve as immediate past president. The newly elected will be sworn in during the SBE membership meeting on September 11th, during the SBE National Meeting. As I noted, it's being held up in Madison, actually in Middleton, Wisconsin, during the Midwest Regional Broadcasters Clinic. The conference is a joint production of the State Broadcast Associations of Wisconsin and Minnesota. So our guest today is Ted Hand. Ted has been an SBE member since 1981. He became SBE president in September 2023. He served as SBE vice president from 2021 to 2023, secretary from 2007 to 2011, and in 2015, SBE treasurer. I'm sorry, he served as secretary also in 2015, and he served as SBE treasurer from 2019 to 2021. He has served on the SBE board of directors several times, from 2002 to 2004, from 2005 to 2007, 2013 to 2015, and also in 2018. Well, hi, Ted.
Hey,
Thanks for
Chris, it's good
joining
to be with
us.
you today.
Great. Thanks for joining us on the SBE WEBxtra today. So you're our guest today, as I had noted earlier, that because in the recent SBE election, you've been reelected to a second term. So
Yep.
congratulations on that.
Thank you, sir.
Got quite a long history with the SBE, which I touched on in the opening as well. But like I said, hello and welcome, and here we go.
Well, thank you, Chris. Just like to thank all those that were elected. We'd like Kevin Trueblood and reelected as vice president. Gary Morrell, who was our secretary, is now moving over to treasurer, and Shane Tobin, who was a board member, is now moving up to secretary. We have 3 new board members: Dustin Halpin, Sam Wallington, and Jeff Junette, who'd been on the board before, is back. And of course, Fred Willard, Dave Antoine, and Greg Dial were reelected. 2 board members chose not to run again, Mark Heller and Tom McGinley. We thank them for their service, and we appreciate them being on the board. And also Jason Ornelas, who was our treasurer, was running again and did not win. And we thank Jason for his service to the board. And we hope in the future that all of these will think again about coming back. And we'll be working on, I'll be working on committee appointments and executive committee appointments in the coming weeks, and we'll have that ready to announce when we get to Madison.
Very good. Very good. So you've got 1 year under your belt. We got 1 year ahead. The SBE has seen some accomplishments in the first year of your presidential term, of course. And I guess let's just maybe do a quick little recap of what they are. We published the SBE self-inspection guidelines. We've had multiple state broadcast associations become sustaining members. We've continued to see increased attendance at webinars by SBE. We've got nearly 100 participants in the mentor program. At the last 2024 NAB show, we had a 2-day SBE NS workshop, which was very successful and had quite a few attendees as well. And that's just a few. Are there any of those?
Well, let's step through those one at a time real quick. That's a great list. Proud of that effort, but it's not me. It's the all 17 board members because that did this as a group. You mentioned the state board, mainly the state's broadcast associations became sustaining member. I don't know what the number is, but I know it's probably at least a dozen or more. I know my own state, North Carolina, became a member. Very proud of that. It's good to see an interaction between the state broadcast associations and SBE. Some state broadcast associations have really strong engineering interaction. I was just in Alabama last week, and they have a very strong Larry Wilkins down there. They have a very strong interrelation with their state board, and they have engineering services. In my own state, North Carolina is not as strong, but I am talking to the board there and hoping we can come up with a more stronger relationship there. We talked about the 2-day NS workshop at Las Vegas. That was very, very well received. I attended the RF one. I know there was also one on IP audio. But we filled up the room in both places. There was a lot of interaction about it. And we hope to do something again in 25. On the ABIT program guidelines, again, that was a big step for us in 24. We still have 1 or 2, the AM, and I think TV translators we're still working on, but they're very close to being done. But that was also well received. We got a lot of feedback from it. I was on a panel discussion discussing that in Las Vegas. We had a lot of people attend that and a lot of good questions. In 25, we hope to move on from the rest of those issues and then strengthen them again. Finish up the ABIT, working on a entry level certification. Again, you notice that last year we started having the education and the certification committees meet. They meet once a year, which I think is a great idea. That way they're interreacting on what education is doing to make it, to use that information for certification tests. So we hope to expand that in 25. And we also are working with Australia in working with education there. We hope to maybe start a chapter in there so they can get educational information, and hope to expire that as a good model of what we've done in Eastern Europe.
Yep. Excellent. Real quick, you mentioned the panel we had at the NAB show about the release of the self-inspection guides. That was recorded and it is available for replay on the SP YouTube channel. We, in fact, didn't use it as part of a WEBxtra, but it is posted up on the YouTube channel. So if you weren't at that session, you can certainly go back and watch it there. A lot of important players were there, from state association representatives, the NAB, of course, Ched Kyler, who has been one of the leads on this whole project, was there,
Yes.
and one of our inspectors as well. So it's been a very well received program by all means. So little SBE plug in the middle of that for there. So
yeah, again, thank you for bringing up Ched Kyler. I didn't mention, but Ched spearheaded this whole thing. He's the chairman of the Government Relations Committee, and he did an outstanding job on this, and he really spearheaded getting this this program moved forward. And it's a big thing for SBE. It's, again, as I've always said, education is the gold spot for SBE. It's what we lay our head on, and it's the center of what we do. And this was a huge step in making that even more so.
absolutely. Yep. Very much so. Very much so. So you mentioned some of the things that have sort of been in the works behind the scenes, working with some members in Australia. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, we were contacted by an Australian broadcast group who were seeking our, they know about the educational programs that SBE has, and they wanted access to that. But we found that it was the best way for them to accomplish that was to start a chapter in Australia and then have members like we just did, and we did in Canada last year, and into this year. There was negotiating back and forth on money and cost. And to be real honest with you, it was hard for us on the board to put a price on what that was really worth. We didn't want to give it away because that wouldn't be fair to our members and our member plus people. So we feel like we couldn't give it away. We would never do that. And we couldn't put a cost on it. So we thought that, well, the best way to do this is just become a member. And then you can do it like any other member in Canada, the US, or Eastern Europe. So we're working on an idea where that could actually happen. And it would be like a virtual chapter like we do up in Canada, which I understand is, I talked to Jeff Welton last week when I was down in Alabama, and he spoke well that's going well with the membership there. Like I said, it's for the whole country, but it's a virtual thing, and their members are getting the education resources that SBE provides.
Yep. And sort of something similar in Eastern Europe with Chapter 148. While granted, the core of their membership is in or around the Republic of Georgia, they do have some other Eastern European members who are a little farther afield. So it's something of a hybrid, probably in their case, more so than a true virtual or predominantly virtual, as we've seen in Canada. And of course, Australia is not exactly a tiny country. Granted, the population is kind of along a certain string in there, but they are spread pretty far between each other, I'm sure.
Yeah, but you'll be working on, I know you're part of this. We are also working to make sure that all these webinars are closed caption.
Mm-hmm.
I know probably most of them are. We're going to try to come up with a thing to make the ones that aren't captioned. We made a decision to not do them in second language because most of the places we talk to in Eastern Europe and even in Mexico, English is not the first language. But we were told if you could get it in English, the majority of the members could understand and comprehend what was going on. So that we've decided just to make sure that all of the of our resources are closed caption, and if they're not, we'll make an effort to get them closed caption.
Right, right. Yeah, and along with that, as you noted, is as long as the captions are there, while understanding the spoken word might not be the easiest for some. If you can read along, it certainly helps. I don't speak Spanish. I do have some other foreign languages under my belt, and yeah, for instance, if I'm watching a show in German, if I can read it, it helps me a lot too. There's a lot that'll
Yeah.
fly by that I just didn't
Yes.
catch. So that certainly is a lot simpler, a lot easier to comprehend and follow along as well.
Yeah.
So you mentioned an entry level certification that's in the works. I know a little bit about that myself, but tell us what you know. Tell us what we can tell them.
Well, it's an effort. I want to reiterate, we are first and foremost a broadcast organization, and I don't want to take anything away from that. That's who we are. But we have found that there are a lot of AV operators out there who work in educational facilities and also work in churches and religious organizations. And they do an awful lot of streaming now, as everybody is. And we thought it would be helpful and to have certifications in the audio and video and streaming fields for these churches and educational institutions. And we feel if we can, it's mostly we can take out, the entry level broadcast things, and you take out all the FCC rules and take out most of the transmitter rules. They're basically already there.
Mm-hmm.
But we see this as a way to help out other people in the AV field. It also helps us as potential memberships for SBE. And as we've also said with the survey, and I've said myself, I got started in broadcasting and got my first good job because I was an SBE member and went to an SBE meeting there in Hampton Roads, Virginia, and I got hired at a network affiliate because I went to those meetings and I was networked with a bunch of other people. And when it came time for them to hire, I was basically told, I don't want to go through the interview process. I don't want to go to the ad process. I see you here every month. I know who you are. Would you like a job? So by being part of the certification, becoming members, it includes you in that networking, which can surely help your career.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. I think a lot of our members have a similar story that by attending meetings and the networking has certainly benefited their careers. I include myself in that batch. And I'm still in touch with some of the people who originally approached me who said, hey, you should come join me this whatever day of the week it was, and get involved. And I did. And here we are.
Yeah.
So kind of let's touch on sort of the national involvement. The board of directors has 12 directors. There are 4 officers and then the immediate past president. And that's really the governing body of the SBE on the national level. As you mentioned, there were a couple of people who ran for seats this election who didn't get elected, and it's obviously nothing against them. If there are 8 people running and only 6 seats available, obviously somebody's going to come up short, and it happens.
Right.
I know you have your own personal story that we talked about the last time you were on the WEBxtra, which we don't need to rehash unless you really want to. But
no, it was painful then, and it's still painful now.
It still stings a little, I bet.
The pain never really goes away from that.
So, any words of advice or insight to those who maybe have their sights on getting involved on a more national level, or quite maybe don't quite know where to start or how to get involved or anything like that?
Well, real quick, before we go with that, I don't mean to pat myself on the back, but you know the story that you were talking about. But we had a board member who was on the board last year, Jeff Jeanette of Orlando, and the day after the election, he did not get reelected, so basically lost. And I called him the next day and reminded him of the story about me. And I said, Jeff, you'd really need to think about it, and you're a good person. You bring a lot to the board, and you should really think about running next year. And he said, well, I'll have to think about it. And he did run, and he was elected this time around. So just because if you ran, and that means if you wanted to be nominated and ran, that means you have something to say and something to provide. And if you didn't make it this time, don't give up. Come back again
Mm-hmm.
next year and run again. And there were two gentlemen who ran, and I'm sorry I don't have their names in front of me. But come back again next year, run again. It's never, if you've got something to say and you've got something to help, there's always room at the table somewhere for you to help out.
Right.
So run again. And again, we welcome the two new board members that we have. And just never give up and run again.
Sure. I know I've been asked, do I need to serve at a local level before running for the national board? And no, you don't have to. It's certainly appreciated, and I think it helps if you've been involved on
Right.
a local level to get some of the experience of working with an organization in that respect. But it's not required. It doesn't say anything about that in the requirements. But we certainly encourage it. Add some insight, and there is no age limit. I think some people may have the misconception that, I've only been a member for a year. Gosh, I'm not qualified. Well, that doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah.
While we would appreciate some local chapter participation, again, not absolutely necessary. But feel free
Yeah,
to
you
jump in the
really,
pool.
you only have to be a member in good standing, and you have to
Mhm.
be certified.
Right.
Which is, I understand why you have to have that, and I support that, and I agree with that. But I have had some people that I knew that I thought would have been great on the board, but they weren't certified, and I did everything I could to try to get certified. But they didn't want to take the time to do it, and that's a mishap for us as a society of some really good people out there who I think can contribute,
Hmm.
but they're not certified. But I do agree that board members should be certified. I'm not trying to cheapen that or get around it. Board
Sure.
members and officers should be what. But again, there's no age limit. There's no membership length time. You can pay your dues, be a member for the first year, and if you're certified, you can run.
Absolutely. Another way to get involved if you don't get elected to the board, we have a whole slew of national committees, and those committees do a lot of the important legwork of the society. There's another volunteer opportunity there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll go ahead and mention it to the general membership if there's a committee that interests you in some way. The chairs of all the committees are listed on the website, as is their contact info. So just reach out and say, hey, I'm interested in whatever your committee does. And I'd like
Yes.
to see if I can help. So by all means, it's another way to get involved. And also helps if you want to move further on and not just do some
Right.
committee work that, again, to actually run for the board one day.
Yeah, you don't have to be a board member to be on the committee or even be a chair. We have chairs for these committees that are not on the board, but they do great work.
Mhm.
They volunteer. And if you want to be on that and you go, well, we've already got a chair, it doesn't keep you from actually being on the committee itself. So we'd love to hear from you. As you said, if there's any of the committees that pop out that think you can contribute and have a voice, let us know.
Sure. Sure. So any other insight, any other plans, projects, things, you may not want to divulge the secret sauce, so to speak.
No, we were just basically what we've done in 24. We of course we did some bylaw changes, which were trying to bring us in line. But I mean, they're not major things, but they're little things that I was trying to clean up and get. But basically, just to put it, we're taking the projects we've got in 24 that we haven't really, or in the middle of, or haven't finished, and we want to make sure. I want to make sure that I get that done before I leave office in 25.
Sure.
And I think just so you know, you can see who your officers are. Just won't mention names, but see who you can see behind me. So I think we're in good shape for the future. Surely, I'm not the best at whatever, but I'm in here now. But you can rest assured that the people we have in line behind me, are good for the society and will continue to lead us on in that direction.
Right. Very good. So I'm going to turn to something on the not necessarily SBE side. I saw that you recently retired from your full-time job of how many years? A lot of years.
46 years.
And
as you can see behind me now in retirement, your office is now what used to be a bedroom. I just actually, it still smells like paint. I put two fresh coats of paint in this room. So that was done this weekend. I haven't had any pictures to hang up. If we do another of these before I leave, I promise you there'll be pictures in the background, and it will be a little bit more exciting than the bare wall back here. But no, we retired.
I was going to say, at least you're not on a green screen where we can do all sorts of fun things with you. But
that's right. Did those during COVID. I know those guys. But doing retirement, and I've been retired now going on 3 months. But we've still got something to keep us busy every day. We're not just sitting around watching TV. We actually have something we do every day. But one thing that I wanted to do when I left June 1st, as you know, we had the board meeting in Indianapolis, and I was going to drive to that anyway. And I did pick up some work, a small thing that I was doing for NAB in DC. And I said, okay, well, I got to drive to DC, and there's a little bit of time left between there and drive to Indy. I just know when to drive all the way back to North Carolina. So real quick, I don't want to bore anybody this, but I think you will find that I wrote this up. Left DC, went to Gettysburg. Gettysburg's not that far away. It's actually close to the thing. It's only a little over an hour from DC. Spent probably 2/3 of a day there. Always wanted to go to Gettysburg and look around. It's a fine place, very open area. Then I said, okay, well, then I got tickets. I'm going to head east. Stayed overnight and then got up the next day and ended up with my favorite president, Theodore Roosevelt. So I ended up going to Sagamore Hill in Oyster Bay on Long Island. And again, a nice, not as big as Gettysburg and not as famous as some of the other presidents, but it is his house that is on top of the hill. It's not, Sagamore Hill is not just a name. It's actually a hill, and the house is built on the crest of it. A nice, lovely area up there. Then continued out to the end of Long Island and took the ferry over to New Haven, Connecticut. And being in North Carolina, I'm spoiled by the state-supported ferries here, where long ferry rides cost like $20, and then you can get on the private ferries to across Long Island Sound is like $90.
Yep.
But anyway, went to New Haven, saw the Coast Guard, ran through the Coast Guard Academy there. My dad was later in life was captain in the Coast Guard. So rode through there, and then I ended up going to Boston and see the Red Sox play. My favorite team, the Red Sox. Saw them beat the Yankees. Enjoyed that night game there. Then got up the next day, traveled back to the West. Next day, stopped at the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton. Visited there, then went down to Cincinnati to see my good friend Jay Adrick at the VOA, which was really nice of Jay. They were not open that day, but he said, if you come in, I'll give you a tour. So if you look up voamuseums.org, it's the old Crosley 500,000 watt transmitter. They used it. It's right down the street from WLW. Mm-hmm. If you're really into old transmitters, analog tubes, that kind of stuff, and anything that Crosley did, Crosley made cars. I didn't even know that, but there's a Crosley car there. If you're ever near Cincinnati up in Mason, please, on a weekend, they're only open on weekends, but please, you need to stop by there if that's your deal. And if not, you can donate there. That's something I donate to. After I left there, went back to Indianapolis, did the board meeting there, spent 2 days there, got up early the next morning, headed further west, stopped by the world's largest truck stop on I-80 in Walcott, I'm sorry. And it is up there, world's largest truck stop. And people think, well, this place makes Buc-ee's look like a phone booth. This place is 3 stories high. It has everything there, and it really is huge. I spent like 2 hours just walking around to the museum there and all. And since this was on my way, I stopped at the Buddy Holly crash site just above Clear Lake, Iowa. It's right in the middle of a field, but the farmer there has provided a path and a parking lot. There's actually in the middle on the corner of a cornfield, they've gravel rocked a parking lot for like 20 cars, and you can walk. It's like a 5-foot path that goes 3/8 of a mile into the middle of his cornfield. And then there's a site there. So that was interesting. Then moved further north, has had some friends in South Dakota, but then I took a day trip up to North Dakota, which nobody else would spend the time to do, but I wanted to see the tallest tower in North America. Up at KDRK, which is right at the station for Fargo, and it's the tallest structure in North America, I believe, and it's the 7th tallest structure in the world. And they've got some tall towers down here in North Carolina, but I'm realizing, this is like 2 school buses on in higher than what we've got in North Carolina. Again, it's in the middle of nowhere, but I went up, had a good meal in Fargo, drove around, saw some stuff, came back. Then later on, I went to Rushmore. Before I got to Rushmore, I went to the Minuteman Museum. Basically, a bunch of silos in South Dakota, North Dakota, and they actually have a museum at one that when they had to disarm from the Russians when they cut back. So they kept one. They didn't tear up one. They just took the fuel out, the nuclear warheads out, and left it there. And you can visit it and look at it. There's a museum there, which is great. That's near Rapid City. And of course, Rapid City is near Rushmore. And then left there and drove to Denver to see my sister who lives in Denver. Drove through some remote areas. If you've ever been to eastern Wyoming, there is nothing there for miles. I almost thought I was going to run out of gas because I hadn't seen it. I said, if I don't get a gas station here in 20 miles, I'm going to be thumbing. And then came across a small town and actually spent the night there in a hotel where it's a motel. You actually drive up to it and get out of your car and walk through the door. You actually park in front of your room. I haven't done one of those in years.
The Bates Motel.
Yeah, the Bates Motel. And you have a metal key with a little plastic tab on it. You actually put a key in a door and turn it. I haven't done that in a hotel in a while.
Yep.
And then spent a couple of days in Denver and saw some things up there, and then headed on back. Went to Pikes Peak and saw some snow up there in the middle of June. But if you want some exciting highway driving, you can ride the top to Pikes Peak. I've now driven up to the top of Mount Washington and to the top of Pikes Peak, and that is not for the young at heart to those kind of drives with no guardrails and no shoulders and nothing. And then left Pikes Peak and then headed back, stopped and saw a friend in Fort Worth. Spent the night there through Amarillo and Fort Worth and back up, and then stopped in Huntsville at the Space and Rocket Center, which I spent 2 or 3 times there, but I love just going and walking around, and then headed back home.
Excellent.
And that was 22 days worth.
Excellent.
6,942 miles.
Wow. And as you noted, you touched on some of these in the column in the August issue of the Signal, the SBE Signal, with a few photos in there, and we're showing a few here too. So
yeah, appreciate
that. Always fun to get out and see what's around us. I'm a big fan of travel personally, whether it's
Yeah,
international or domestic. And we've got enough going on in the United States that if you can't get farther afield, at least try to get out of your own neighborhood once in a while. I fully
that's
endorse
true.
that idea. So,
I do too. That was something I've always wanted to do, and work was, as all broadcast engineers, you can never get away. There was no way you could get away for 3 weeks as a broadcast engineer
yeah.
and go anywhere. It was impossible.
Nope.
So that was a bucket list thing to do all that. And I missed some places. Like I said, I had to come back early for some reasons, but there's another trip out there next year, and the next summer I'm going to pick up the places I
I was just
missed.
going to say, it gives you an excuse to go back. So
There you go. So
yeah.
I'll be back on the road next summer.
Excellent. Very good. Well, it's been great talking to you again, Ted. Anything we haven't touched on, getting back to the SBE business side of things?
The SB, just want to remind everybody, upcoming Madison.
Absolutely.
If you haven't gotten your hotel, and however you get yourself from point A to point B, whether it's driving or flying or train or however you get there, you need to get that done. We're a month away. We're just under a month away from that.
Yep.
So make
September
your
10th
plans
and
for
11th,
that.
the SB National Meeting in Madison, Middleton, Wisconsin, right next to Madison.
Wisconsin. And just to announce that I will be attending IBC in Amsterdam right after that. I'm literally flying from Madison to Amsterdam because I won't have time to come back to Carolina. So
great.
Be going over and show the flag for SBE over there.
Good. Practice up your Dutch. You won't really need it. I joke that the Dutch speak English better than most Americans, so they really.
I actually, one of the few places I have actually been to Amsterdam. I went there about 10 years ago. Beautiful place.
Yep, it's a great country.
Place.
Good place to visit. Great. Well, anything else we want to touch on at this point? So
no, I think we got it all done this time, Chris.
Okay, very good. Well, once again, I appreciate you being our guest on the SBE WEBxtra, giving us a little insight into what's ahead for your next 1-year term. And then that's the end of your presidential term. You can't run again by our own bylaws, but you'll.
But I get to sit in the back of the room at the board meeting and be the immediate past president.
Exactly. You get the luxury
of chair.
Yep. You get to kind of sit there and smirk and watch all the other people make mistakes that you know.
Watch everybody else's time in the barrel.
Exactly. Very good. Well, once again, thanks for joining us today,
Thank
Ted.
You, Chris.
And I'll see you in Madison.
All right.
Thanks for watching the SBE WEBxtra, the SBE chapter of the web from the Society of Broadcast Engineers, the Association for Broadcast and Multimedia Technology Professionals. Thanks once again to Ted Hand for being with us today. If you hold SBE certification, viewing the SBE WEBxtra qualifies you for 1/2 point in Category G, that's attendance. It's just like attending a local chapter meeting. And if you have an idea for a topic or a guest for the SBE WEBxtra, please send it to us. Send it to webextra@sbe.org. Thanks again for watching. I'm Chris Scherer, SBE Member Communications Director, and we'll see you next month.